Abracadabra. Remember being fascinated by musicians who would make things disappear? Well, menopause is kind of magical. All sorts of things disappear at menopause. I'm Menopause Taylor. Welcome to the state of menopause in the world today. And welcome to this big, long series on how to manage your menopause your way. I teach you everything, absolutely everything about menopause and more. So you've tuned in to something that is part of the WHAM collection. WHAM, W-H-A-M, that stands for What Happens at Menopause. And as you've already heard, a wide variety of things happen at menopause. Some things dry up, some things shrink, others grow, some sag. Some get harder, and some new things appear. And as I indicated earlier, some things disappear. And this podcast is all about the things that disappear. Now, many of the things that disappear fall in line with the symptoms you have at menopause. Others are related to the diseases that are associated with menopause. And a couple are related to social matters at menopause. So now, if you're wondering why in the world you need to listen to this podcast, let me just say this. All women should be listening to these podcasts or watching my videos or something. This is the education women have always deserved. Go ask women how much education they received before menopause. Wham! Hit them over the head with a ton of bricks. I guarantee that they'll all say that they received no education at all. And if you look from one woman to another, just like dominoes, they'll say, me neither, me neither, me neither. So you need to watch all my videos or listen to all my podcasts or get my book or watch the series of webinars or whatever because you deserve this education. So I will just enumerate each thing that disappears at menopause and I'll elaborate just a little bit on each item as I go along. Obviously, the first thing to disappear are your periods. And for most women, that's kind of a hallelujah occurrence. You know, very few women actually like having periods. But now, there are exceptions to absolutely everything. And this is no different. Some women actually do like their periods. But mostly, they like the significance of their periods and the fertility they represent. Not many women like the actual bleeding. In any case, disappearance of your periods is generally a welcome event. Not so welcome is the disappearance of your sleep. Remember the first year after having a baby? Statistically, you lose 2.9 hours of sleep every night in that first year of your child's life. Now, mathematically, that is 20.3 hours per week, which is 87 hours per month, which is 1,058 hours per year. Well, the statistics for menopause are not quite as well defined, but there's a lot of similarity in the fact that menopause wreaks havoc on your sleep. And a lot of your sleep simply disappears. And whenever you don't get enough sleep, what happens? Well, you can't remember things. So one of the most direct consequences of lost sleep is disappearance of your memory. And it's the strangest thing. I mean, you go upstairs and you forget what you went up there for. You think of something one minute, and you can't remember what you were thinking about the very next minute. It's enough to make you think you're going crazy or getting Alzheimer's. Well, you're not going crazy, and this is not a sign of Alzheimer's. It's a sign of estrogen loss. So when your estrogen disappears, so does your witty, snappy memory. Oh, and when your sleep and memory disappear, so does your even temper. You become irritable. You lose your cool with very little provocation. This disappearance of your even temper may be on an interpersonal level or on a personal level. In other words, you may blow up at other people for little things, or you may just be angry with yourself, your situation, and life in general. Do you remember that movie, Steel Magnolias? Shirley MacLaine plays a character of the town curmudgeon. She's mad at everyone all the time. I think she depicts the effect of estrogen loss. It's very funny, but it's really quite true. Okay, now here's a disappearance about which you may be unaware. Your ability to reject alcohol disappears. Most women don't realize that menopause is linked to an increase in alcohol consumption. This is one of the things women don't talk about, but they should, because this is a huge problem at both perimenopause and postmenopause. Craving alcohol. Craving it is so prevalent. Craving it so much that your ability to resist it completely disappears. Some peri and postmenopausal women drink all day long. They can't resist. So estrogen disappears, and so does your ability to resist alcohol. Next is your soft skin. Wham! It just goes away. Suddenly, it's dry, rough, and wrinkled. Why? You know the answer, don't you? It's because magical estrogen disappears. I've covered this in great detail on the podcast on what dries up at menopause. So if you haven't heard that one, you should hear it or go watch my video on it. Oh, and along with your soft skin, you see your hair disappear. You know, women really hate this. But here's why it happens. You know how men start balding and then they just lose more and more of their hair over time? That is a function of high levels of testosterone. Well, women have estrogen levels in excess of testosterone until they become postmenopausal. But at postmenopause, when estrogen disappears, relatively speaking, your testosterone level is much higher relative to your estrogen level, at least for the first couple of years. So in the early years of postmenopause, which is on average about age 51 to 53, your estrogen plummets. Wham! It's gone. But your testosterone stays significantly higher than your estrogen. It hasn't disappeared yet. So that is when most women notice hair loss. Your testosterone doesn't reach its lowest level until about 2 years into your postmenopause. And while you may continue to notice hair loss, it usually is not as drastic as time goes on. Okay, now for the big ticket item, vaginal everything. One of the most obvious disappearing acts at menopause is your vaginal health. I've told you before that this is the most bothersome physical symptom of menopause. And notice that I use the term vaginal health. And that's because everything that made your vagina functional as a vagina disappears at menopause. There are 3 qualities that make your vagina functional. It's thick walls, the wrinkles in those walls, and its lubrication. At menopause, wham, they all disappear. Your vagina is heavily dependent on estrogen. It loves the stuff. Without it, everything you consider to be normal about your vagina disappears. So, the thick wall disappears, the wrinkles disappear, and the lubrication disappears. When I demonstrate this in videos, in a seminar, in any way of the person visualizing what I'm talking about, I use for a prop a canister, one for your premenopausal vagina and one for your postmenopausal vagina. And on one of the canisters for your premenopausal vagina, I put a thick, woolly tube sock. A big, thick, woolly tube sock. And on the other one for the postmenopausal vagina, I put a sheer, thin nylon stocking. The one with the tube sock handles friction just fine. But the one with the nylon stocking tears with even the slightest friction. And it even has a run in it to represent the tearing or laceration with friction. And the premenopausal vagina with the tube sock, I scrunch the tube sock way up so that it has a bunch of wrinkles, because that's what your vagina is like before menopause. But after menopause, after postmenopause, when you've lost your estrogen, it's like the nylon pantyhose that is thin, 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 without a single wrinkle in it. It is taut, wrinkle poor, like a piece of cardboard. And before postmenopause, the one with the tube sock can stretch and lengthen to accommodate an erect penis. But the one with the pantyhose is stiff. It's unable to stretch. It can't lengthen. It's unable to accommodate anything without tearing. And with lubrication, I put all kinds of gooey stuff all over the tube sock because your vagina is so lubricated before menopause. And after, it's dry as a bone, and that pantyhose is just completely dry. So when your vagina is lubricated, everything glides easily over the surface. But something that's dry resists movement of anything on its surface. So a postmenopausal vagina doesn't resist movement and causes tearing instead of gliding. So at menopause, your thick vaginal walls, your vaginal wrinkles, and your vaginal lubrication all disappear. And as I taught you in an earlier podcast, the end result of all of those changes is that your vagina literally shrinks. Can you believe we're not finished yet with the disappearances at menopause? The next thing that disappears is your waistline. Now, I taught you that your abdomen grows at menopause. And as your abdomen grows, your waistline disappears. This is why our girly figures disappear at menopause. Instead of that wonderful hourglass shape, we get more of an apple shape. Our waist measurement gets closer to our hip measurement. It's very frustrating. Women hate this. We all complain about it. Even if you're not fat, this happens. And your urinary control disappears too. It gets more and more difficult to hold your urine, and you leak. Suddenly, you need to know where the ladies' room is at all times. And you actually urinate before going anywhere. You don't dare go out of the house without urinating or leave a restaurant without urinating. And your urinary control disappears precisely because your estrogen disappears. So if you haven't